Well, good evening, everyone. This is John Craig.
And this is Sandi.
All right, there you go. And you are watching Let Us Reason Together. No,
No,
we did that
you're not watching Let Us
yesterday.
Reason
This is
Together.
Walking in Spirit and Truth. I gotta remember what show are we doing right now. Oh, what a breeze it's been in. But hey, we're gonna have a good time tonight. We got some things we want to talk about and share with you, and just more than anything, we just want to encourage you. And because what better time than for us just to come together and share our hearts? Amen.
I agree. It's always good. And it's always good to break open the word together and do a deep study of something and take your time. And of course, that is what we have been doing right here on this program for Psalm 91. And we're going to continue on that journey and in that vein tonight. And anyway, so we're going to start with opening our Bibles to, what do you think? Psalm 91. And so let's all turn there right now. We're going to read verses 1 through 12.
Psalm 91, we're going to read through verses 1 through 12. Okay,
Right.
bear with me for just a second.
As he's
What
pulling that up, we've
version?
been looking at verses 9 and 10, and we've been really looking at the concept of evil and how it's so much probably different than what you would have thought and expected. And it is broader and with a whole bunch of questions. And you need to go listen to the last couple of shows when we talked about evil to get some specifics, because it was really good. I think it was 2 or 3 shows that we did in that concerning Psalm 91 verses 10 or 9 and 10. And we're going to just sort of top that off tonight and go on to verses 11 and 12, and we'll see how far we can get. And anyway, if you would start reading that, that would be great.
Well, I since my hard copy is at the house, I'm going to read from the TLV version. The
Okay.
living. Okay, what's that version? TLV.
I don't just read. Don't worry about it. Just read it.
Here we go. All right. So Psalm 91. This is 1 through 12. He who dwells in the shelter of Elyon will abide in the shadow of Shaddai. I will say of Adonai, he is my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. For he will rescue you from the hunter's trap and from the deadly pestilence. And he will cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you will find refuge. His faithfulness is body armor and shield. You will not fear the terror by night, nor the arrow that flies by day, nor the plague that stalks in darkness, nor the scourge that lays waste at noon. 1,000 may fall at your side, and 10,000 at your right hand, but it will not come near you. You will only look on with your eyes and see the wicked paid back. For you have made Elyon your dwelling, even Adonai, who is my refuge. So no evil will befall you, nor any plague come near your tent. For he will give his angels charge over you to guard you in all your ways. Upon their hands they will lift you up, lest you strike your foot against a stone.
All right. And that is good. It's always good. It's always good to hear that. Hopefully you have that memorized by now. I hope you do. Anyway, before we get going in just a little bit of explanation, I want us to look at the chiastic structure of verses 1 through 13 one more time, because I think it's really important. If you don't understand what a chiastic structure is, it is where you see it, where something might seem repetitive in the word, it's probably building a bullet point where point 1 here matches another point earlier in the text, and 2, and you look at that, and the very center of that will be your what Yah wants you to zone in on. So just to start, I want us to look at the chiastic structure of these verses, because when we look at the very first 2 verses, he who dwells in the secret place of the Most High, and you look at surely he shall, and then you say, surely he shall deliver you from the snare of the fowler and the perilous pestilence. Well, when you look at that verse, it also somewhat coincides with verse 13. You shall tread upon the lion and the cobra, the young lion and the serpent, and you shall trample underfoot. I know we didn't just read that, but this is part of those first 13 verses. And you look at that, and those 2 bullet points somewhat match, because what do you think about the snare of a fowler? When you look at that and you think about that, you think of something catching prey. And that's why we see this with the young lion, the lion and the cobra, the young lion, the serpent, you shall trample underfoot. And of course, we see the perilous pestilence as what it is. But I want us to look at those two. And then underneath it up above those two and below, you would look at verse 4, for he shall cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you shall take refuge. Well, doesn't that sound a little bit like verse 11 through 12? For he shall give his angels charge over you to keep you in all your ways. He shall cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you shall take refuge. It's very, very similar. So we sort of see those two bullet points go together. And then in verses 91, 5 through 7, it says, you shall not be afraid, for it shall not come near you. Well, that very much corresponds with verse 10. No evil shall befall you, nor any plague come near your dwelling. Do you see how those sort of come together? And then, of course, our central, that you see 2a and 1a go together. Because you have made the Lord, who is my refuge, even the Most High, your dwelling place. That's verse 9, goes very much with Psalm 91, verses 1 through 2. He who dwells in the secret place of the Most High. What does that mean? Think about that. Verse 1 and 2, he who dwells in the secret place of the Most High. Verse 9, because you have made Yehovah, who is your refuge, even the Most High, your dwelling place. So where does that leave us? Well, there's one verse we haven't mentioned in those first 13 verses, which would be your central axis, which would be something that Yah is pointing out and saying, hey, look at this, look at this, look at this. And that is, only with your eyes shall you look and see the reward of the wicked. Now that is pretty exciting to think that he's trying to get us to zero in on this one verse. Only with your eyes shall you look and see the reward of the wicked. So you see that structure. You can see that structure goes like this and this and this, and then you have that central bullet point. And that is a chiasm right there, chiastic structure. So only with your eyes shall you look and see the reward of the wicked. That's a great promise, right?
That's so cool. I think that's really cool, Sandy, that you bring that out, because what is it really? It's really showing us he's the one that's protecting. He's the one that's the shield. He's the one that is covering. He's the one then that that destroys all of those elements and serpents and lions and tigers and bears. Oh my! He's the one that's doing it all, and all we're doing is we're watching. But it's all based on, like what we talked about before. It's based on our action of making him our refuge.
Yeah, and I don't know that we're just necessarily watching. We're sitting back and we're trusting, but remember, everything in Hebrew is active. So our watching and our trusting has activity to it. It has motion to it. That means we're speaking forth the word. That means we're following his commands. We're making sure that there's not a chink where the enemy can come through. It means that we are watching the words of our mouth. It means that we realize who we are and that we've taken up our armor and that we are still taking ground even as we're watching Yah do his work. Our rest is resting in him with the assurance that he's got us and taking care of us. But there's always action behind it. We can't just sit in bed and say, oh, God's going to take care of it. That's a very Greek concept. Because we're Hebrew, our resting and our trusting still has action.
Yeah, and that's really good, because looking that word up there in 91:8, it says only with your eyes, talking about ayin, which is it's really in a position of humility. It's a position of letting down our guard, so to speak, letting down our ability to want to fight for ourselves. Only with thine eyes. You think with thy eyes, something that we're looking on, which literally it means our eyes, but it's in a position. Again, it's always positioning. And this whole thing is about what's our position. Are we in a position that we're going to fight it in our own strength? Are we in a position that in humility that he's the one that is fighting it? Because it says, only with your eyes shall you behold. That word nabat, nabat means that you're going to scan it, you're going to watch it, you're going to, even with in regard with pleasure and favor or care. In other words, it's like, wow, he's doing it. He's really doing it for me. He's really battling the wicked here. And it's that position like, whoa, wow. When I took my hands off of it, when I stopped doing the battle myself, when I let go, whoa, check it out. Look what he's doing. And then we get that tremendous word, which was just recently a Torah portion, which, well, this is Ra'ah. We just had Ra'ah. But Ra'ah, it's H7200, which means to see literally or figuratively. And when we've talked about this in the past at Life of Worship, and we've gone into study of that word Ra'ah, talking about in the position of that which goes beyond experience, that which is beyond the physical experience, that takes you into that realm of the spiritual understanding, the spiritual vision to see what is more than what's on the surface. It's kind of like Elijah's servant when he said, the Syrians have surrounded us. And he says, no, wait a minute. Father, open his eyes.
Open your
Open his eyes that he can see. And what did he say? Go out there and look again. And he said, wow, there's more that are with us than are against us.
Amen. And that's
so,
true for that's true for us today too. We've got to remember that the enemy wants us to consider that we're alone and that where it's just one of us or just a couple of us puny people fighting. No, there's more with us than against us. And that's what we've got to understand. But also when we look at these verses right here, especially verses 9 through 13, they are conditional verses. And we have, like I said, we have been looking at verses 9 and 10, but let's just look at them one more time, just real closely for a moment. Because you have made Jehovah your refuge and the Most High your dwelling place, no evil shall happen to you, neither shall any plague come near your dwelling. These conditional promises, they're assuming that that is what you're doing and that is how you're living. And those promises of making Yahweh our refuge assumes that we have complied with every condition, so that these promises apply to our lives. But the conditional nature of the promises also are warning that there may not work if we disassociate ourselves with Yahweh, with his commands, with his covenant, with his word, with Yeshua. And then we wonder why this and this is happening. Sometimes we need to take a look at our own lives, but then we jump over, for he will put his angels in charge of you and guard you in all your ways. They will bear you up in their hands, lest you dash your foot against a stone. And these verses sound familiar because we're about to go into that. Do they sound familiar to you? Of course they do, because we see them quoted in the New Testament, in the Brit Hadashah, when Satan said, if you are the Son of God, throw yourself down, for it is written, he will put his angels in charge of you so on, and on the other hand will bear you up so that you won't dash your foot against a stone. Jesus, what did Yeshua say? He countered, he said, again, it's written, you shall not test Yahweh your Elohim. You shall not test the Lord your God. Okay, we are going to look at a comparison of Psalm 91:11 and Matthew 4:6 here pretty soon. But before we do that, I wanted to just preface with a few things, and then we're going to delve into that, because I think we might be amiss if we didn't look at how this verse is used in the Brit Hadashah, even though it was used by Hasatan himself. All right. So just briefly, this is not the in-depth study yet, because we will go into more of these words. And especially when we're talking about angels, I'm not going to focus on that tonight, because I think that's going to take a little bit. That's going to take some time. Not us briefly brushing over it, but you see just briefly that you see angels. How do these spirit beings move? By his instruction, and they're surrendered to Yah's power and authority and instruction. In fact, I've even heard it said that, we need to say, hey, we need this help here and here, because they're messengers. They're out there to fight for us. But again, we're not going to study angels tonight. But when we look at giving charge, he gives charge and he sends them to draw himself draw us to him and secure us in his presence, and to keep us. Now, remember, we've talked about being encircled in this study of Psalm 91. Some of the word pictures that are giving is Yahweh encircling us as with a fire, and nothing can penetrate that fire. And when he keeps us, he encircles us with that fire to consume the enemies as we humble ourselves, and we're hidden in him, who is the head over all principalities and powers. And I don't remember what program it was, but we went into detail about how Psalm 91, in one of the verses, it gives us that picture of being encircled with fire, being protected there. And we cannot forget that. That is an amazing source of protection. Him, the all-consuming fire surrounding us to keep us safe. Wow, I love that. And so wherever we go and in all that we do, we also understand in all our ways that he's the door we go through as we continue to remain surrendered. Where? In the palm of his hand, in his refuge, in his dwelling, not in our own strength and power. Okay, with that being said, and this is probably going to take up the remainder of our time tonight, in at least in part, I want us to jump over to Matthew 4:6, because we're going to look at that and say, hey, are there some things that we can look at here? Because we probably knew that. Many that grew up in the church might have known that before Psalm 91. But again, Psalm 91 is, I think felt like I've known forever. So that may not be the case. But let's read again one more time, Matthew 4:6.
All right. I'm going to read this from the King James Version. And he saith unto him, If thou be the Son of God, cast thyself down, for it is written, He shall give his angels charge concerning thee, and in their hands they bear thee up, and in their hands they shall bear thee up. I just read that again. Lest at any time thou dash thy foot against a stone.
Okay. We have heard this. This is that testing of Yeshua when he's in the wilderness where Hasatan approaches him. Now, I have this question. Do you think he knows he's the Son of Yah? Because it says there, if you are the Son of Yah. Do you think he knows that, the answer to that?
I would say yes.
Yes. So maybe that phrase in and of itself isn't quite what it seems. Maybe it's not inquiring like, I wonder if you are the Son of God. Maybe there's more to that than meets the eye. So let's look, because the enemy knows who Yeshua is, and he knew and Yeshua knew who he was. And so does Yeshua have to prove anything to him on his identity? No, he doesn't. But when we look at the passage, he said there are three types of ifs in the Greek. Okay. So y'all probably need to take notes on this, but there's the if, like the if is not or the if of whether or not. But this is the if of since this is the case. So what are the three ifs? If is not, or if or whether or not, or if meaning since this is the case. And that's what we have here. Since you are the Son of Yah. The enemy wasn't saying, Yeshua, prove to me that you are the Son of Yah because I don't believe it. Come on. That's not what he's doing. He's sort of saying, okay, you know who you are. I know who you are. Now, let's see what you're made of. Let's see what you got. Let's see the power and strength that you walk in. That is the if that we have here. And even as a kid, that's sort of what I always thought of it as. I never thought it to be if, like, I wonder if you are the son of Yah. How did you grow up? Which did you?
Actually, to me, when I read it growing up, what I looked at it as is I'm challenging you whether you or not you are the Son of God. Because if you really are, then this is going to happen. And so I always looked at it as a challenge that way. But now that I'm older, I have a little bit more cynical view of it, as in regards to there's a translation error based on the particular translator's interpretation or the doctrine that they are wanting to lead the reader to believe. And because I really think that it's better translated as, and saith unto him, that thou be the Son of God, cast thyself down. I think that is much better than if, because especially in modern, maybe it was not so in the King Jimmy days, but I would say during our days today, if means if or if then or if this or if that, and it's so it could certainly mean a challenge to Yeshua's sovereignty and his authority. Uh, but I think it's more that what you pointed out is exactly correct, and I think people should take that little if, put a line through it, put a little margin note in there, and change it to that.
Or since
That's my
you are
yes,
the Son of Yah.
exactly.
Since.
That's a good way to that's a good way to sure.
Yeah, because what exactly was the enemy trying to accomplish? What was he trying to do here? Because he had to have known Yeshua would not sin. And so what was his motivation? Well, I believe his motivation was fear. Not that Yeshua would fear, but maybe that the people would fear. So go ahead.
I'm sorry. I'm still stuck on that if, and I was just looking at how it's been translated in other parts. There's another verse in Acts 11:17. That same word is translated as for as much. So for as much thou be the Son of God, cast thyself down. I mean, why wouldn't one translate it that way? It just doesn't make sense to me why there would be a particular doctrinal bias that is literally misleading. It's as if Hasatan was influencing the translator during the interpretation from the Greek into or into the English. Yeah, as if to mislead those future readers. I mean, to me, that's pretty serious. I think it's like the very same spirit that was influencing Yeshua at that same time. That same spirit, which is Hasatan, is influencing to knowing that people may say, okay, well, it might still be in doubt that Yeshua is the Son of God. And therefore, is he man or is he Son of God? Or, who is this guy? Is he a prophet? There's all that stuff that's brought up in who do you say that I am when Yeshua spoke to the disciples in Matthew chapter 16. And that's when Peter had that amazing revelation. Well, you are the Son of the living God. And Yeshua, you said, body of Messiah is going to be built is upon that solid foundation of who I am.
With all,
sorry, I took you off track.
Well, no, I want us to go ahead and read in that passage. I want you to read that full temptation, the full thing, the full testing that the enemy tried to do, or really, I mean, Yah uses it. So let's read that whole thing there, because I think it's going to matter to the rest of what I'm going to say. And while you're getting that ready, again, I really believe that when the enemy said this and was quoting Psalm 91, he understood who Yah was, and he wanted him to see, he wanted to see everything that he was made of, and he wanted to just challenge him that way and just see where it would go and things like that. So go ahead and read that.
Okay, which verses again?
I told you the whole temptation there.
Oh, okay. All right. I wish I had my hard copy Bible because I got to scroll. Okay, so this goes back to Matthew 4:1. And then was Yeshua led up of the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted of the devil. And when he had fasted 40 days and 40 nights, he was afterward hungered. And when the tempter came to him, he said, if thou be the Son of God, command that these stones be made bread. But he answered and said, it is written, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of God. Then the devil takes him up into the holy city and sets him on a pinnacle of the temple. And he said unto him, if thou be the Son of God, and cast thyself down, for it is written, He shall give his angels charge concerning thee, and in their hands they shall bear thee up, lest at any time thou dash thy foot against a stone. Yeshua said
Right.
unto him,
That's where I wanted.
Okay.
That's what I wanted right there. Now, here we see the enemy's temptation. We see the enemy messing with Yeshua, but we also see the enemy approaching Yahweh in the book of Job when he said, hey, when Yahweh replied to the enemy, he said, hey, look at my servant Job. He loves me. He serves me. And of course the enemy was like, huh, yeah, he does that because you pay him. You give him all the good stuff and you pay him so well. So take away everything that he has and he's going to curse you. But what Job proved was that man can serve Yah out of love, without a reward, without the fear of losing something. Now, why am I bringing this up? Because I believe that possibly the enemy I think the enemy uses fear to move people. That's his tactic. One of his tactics is fear. Use fear. But what's greater, fear or love? Hopefully.
Well, yeah. Well, love casts out all fear.
Yes.
Because fear
So,
has to do with punishment, is what First John says.
right. So maybe, possibly, what we have happening here between Yeshua and the enemy, when he said, hey, since you are the Son of God, jump off the highest point of the temple. Now, think about this. And you think everything is up, because think of the position. I mean, we've all seen that. So we've got the Dead Sea, the Red Sea. Anyway, we've got low points in Israel. And so the temple's, a high spot. But if Yeshua would have done that, there would have been a host of angels coming to his aid. Not that he would have even needed that, but and what would have happened to all the religious leaders at the time if they saw that happen, physically saw that happen? What would have happened to everyone, but especially the religious leaders of the time, the ones that would later persecute him? They would come into compliance out of fear. Whoa.
That'd be true.
So they'd see this host, huh?
I said that'd be true. I think that's a really good assessment.
They would have fallen down and begun to worship Yeshua out of what motivation?
Yeah, out of fear. Mm-hmm.
They would have worshipped him out of fear. There would have been no love and no relationship and no desire for that. And it would just be this fear motivation. And that's not how Yeshua wants us to come to him. He wants us to accept him, accept this process, this ongoing working out salvation through love and not fear. We can get people to say a prayer, and we can get people to go to church, and if you strike fear in them, but that's not how it's supposed to work anyway. There should be the fear, the reverential fear of Yah, but Hasatan likes to move people through fear, and that's the enemy's tool. I don't believe that's the tool of our King, and I don't think that's what he wants from us. So, I mean, if you ever have that word picture, imagine, or that picture in your head, what would have happened if? Now, of course, that didn't happen, and it wouldn't have happened. But, I mean, it does paint an interesting picture. Now, when we look at Psalm 91, it's designed to remove fear from us. I mean, when you think of that whole scripture, and we go to the intricacies of what we've been saying and talking out for weeks, we should have fear removed from us by just standing on his word, not just this psalm, but is this whole word, and trust it and believe it, because he says he will give his angels charge over us to keep us in all our ways. Okay, so what is charge? Let's look at this word charge for a moment. In the Hebrew, it's savah, Tsavah. Okay. And it means to give orders or to command. In the Babylonian Aramaic, it's the idea of carrying out a divine command or a divine order. So here you have that picture of divine. Well, where's that coming then? Those orders are coming from Yah himself. But one rabbi actually uses the word zavah to express this idea of equipping and giving the supplies to carry out the divine order. So we see this progression in these layers of meaning from different people, to give orders or command, the next one to carrying out a divine command or divine order, and the next one, the idea of equipping and giving supplies to carry out the divine order. Do you see how that builds on each other? Well, that's what zavah is. So where does that fit in the scripture? So he will give his angels charge. He is going to give them commands, divine commands, and equip them with what they need to carry out the divine order of our Yah. Well, that's pretty great. And then we say, to keep us in all our ways. Well, what do we see with way? Of course, that's derek, which we've talked about before, but that can mean more than way. It can mean a way of life. And we're given, it didn't mean that the angels were given charge to protect Yeshua, but to help him and equip him and to carry out his divine plan of love, even while he's being persecuted. But guess what? They're there to also help us so we can carry out the divine calling that we have on our lives as well. Because we all have, I believe we all have, there's a plan and a purpose for each of us. And that's why we always pray that let us fulfill every purpose for which God's called us, because we so easily get distracted from his way, his derek, and we go our own. And that's not what this promise is. He's going to keep his angels, give his angels charge over us, to keep us in all our ways. So here we have this word. The enemy took Yeshua where he could see the world and said, hey, man, I'll give you this creature, and you don't have to suffer and die for them. They're all yours without any kind of horrid journey that you might have to encounter. I've always thought about that. I've always thought, well, why? It's all Yeshua's anyway. Why would he offer this? And when you think about it in the context, well, you won't have to go through pain and suffering if you just follow me, get in line with me. So it's just a thought. Now I want us to look at guard, for he will give his angels charge concerning you to guard or to keep. Now that word there for guard or keep is shamar. And that word is actually used more than 400 times in the Tanakh, in the Old Testament. And the basic meaning of it, we could delve into it deeply, but it means to watch over. How? It's not just to watch over, but to watch over with great care. And it describes almost the actions of somebody that's on the night watch, that's a night watcher over a city, or who is carefully tending the garden. It reminds me of, I heard that there are beasts that will trample a gardens in Africa, wherever there's produce. And it was asked, well, how do you,
Hippos.
Yes, you heard that. Yeah, it was probably from you. I don't know who it was from. But if you think about the hippos are some of the most violent creatures. They're dangerous. So how do you keep your garden? How do you keep, which is your life supply? Well, they have watchmen watching the garden at night to prevent the hippos from coming. And here we have the same picture with shamar, to carefully tending a garden, to watch over a city, the night watch. So most frequently when we look at shamar, that describes a rigorous adherence and adoration for Yah's laws and commands. So with all of this together, it has a lot of power. This word does. It's not just about a ritual compliance with his instructions. It expresses, when you go along with it, this deep and abiding concern that Yah's commandments form that very fabric of life, that intricate fabric that keeps us, that guards us. It's wrapped around us. And that goes back to the protection I was talking about on Shabbat 2 weeks ago. Is that protection is not only has he protected us in his love, but it's like an intertwining fabric. That's what his protection is like, of love and protection. And that's a beautiful picture right there, because this word shamar expands to scenes of also tending a flock and watching a gate, or even showing respect and consideration for Yah himself or for another. So when Yah gives his angels charge over us, it's not just some little thing. their charge from Yah is it's literally a sacred admonition of to guard his law. Yah's very character is expressed in his word, and it's just and it's true, and it's the foundation of our relationship with him, and the reason that Yeshua came to die for us in the first place. So the fact that angels have this divine ordered care over us demonstrates how important each and every one of us are to him. Each and every one of us is to him, because he enlists spiritual beings to watch over us and to keep us. They're soldiers of the night. They're protecting us. They are there in moments of trial and directing us. They tend our souls like professional gardeners, and they nourish us like shepherds. And that's what we see here in this action. And you may say, well, I don't know about that. Well, I've heard of time after time of divine intervention happening in one's life, and that we may not understand it. It says we entertain angels unaware. Again, I don't want to get bogged down in that tonight. So we're going to go forward, and we'll go back and revisit. Yes.
So I wanted to say something here because you triggered some things in my mind, and so I want to run some parallels that really go along with this, because considering that we find that Paul brings out the fact that Yeshua is the second Adam. So there's the first Adam, and Yeshua is the second Adam. The fact that the first Adam was given charge to shamar, to guard and keep and protect the garden, that we see here that Yeshua, who has come out of the wilderness, and the garden is, Dr. Dina Dye has done such a really good job to show the parallel that the garden is a picture of the temple, the tabernacle. And so where is Yeshua now, and where did Hasatan come and meet with Yeshua? And besides, with the rocks, but then he takes him to this highest pinnacle of the temple and says, look, you need to, cast yourself off of this so the angels catch you. Well, here we've got a picture of the same thing repeating as Adam did in the garden. Adam was forced at the tree, which could be looked at, two trees, two pinnacles in the midst of the tabernacle of the garden, and by which at that point the fall of Adam came, because he listened to the words of Hasatan, and he allowed himself to follow those words so as to disobey the Father, and to take things out of context, to allow that word to be twisted and just added to just enough to say, well, this really feels like it's in context, but it's not in context. And so here Yeshua is now on a pinnacle in the front of the temple, on the top of the temple, and he's being faced by Hasatan, who's saying, look, we're sitting here, we're just looking, we're at the guard again. And by the way, I'm in charge here. Remember the first Adam? So I'm just going to give you all of this if you will just do this one thing and jump off. And because the angels are going to catch you, right? And so this parallel that's going on, and Yeshua, being the perfect gardener, understands that, yes, and you're bringing out this great point, the angels, just like we see when Adam was forced to leave the garden, what was left there to guard the gate of the garden but the cherubim, the one with the flaming sword. And just as there was a flame, just as that was left at the garden, Yeshua is very much aware of who the heavenly guard is that's right there with him at any point in time, because he can see into that dimension. Of course, he's seeing Hasatan in that dimension. So now he's seeing in that dimension. He can see all the things that are going on around him. It's like, I'm one step ahead of you. And so he knows that his position is to shamar, to keep and to guard the garden, to keep and guard this tabernacle, which is the replica of that which would be the heavenly tabernacle that's come down to the earth, the representation of our living together with Elohim as one. And so we have that parallel. Yeshua saying, nope, we're not repeating the mistakes of the past. I'm in charge here, and I've got the angels with me on this one. So that's my take on it.
Well, and that's good. And that's exactly right. I love that. I love all of that. I wanted us to look at one more part of this before we go on to the news, and that's fall down, the Nafal and Nafal here. And I want us to remember that we see that in Isaiah 14:12, where it says, "How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning?" So that word in the Hebrew for fallen is Nafal, which it's identical to the Aramaic word Nafal, which is very interesting. Now, if you'll fall down and worship me, let's look at this word worship here. This is in this, we're still looking at the Matthew 4:6 text and comparing back and forth for Psalm 91:11, because that word, we normally hear shakah as worship. That's the word that one of the words that we commonly use for worship. But the word is saged. Saged in Aramaic has more of an idea of teaming up or joining me. Okay, when we've heard this before, you probably had this picture that Yeshua was supposed to bow down and worship Hasatan. That's not what's being said here.
I think you locked up there, Sandy. Wow, the enemy didn't like that. You're all locked up, Sandy. I don't know what to do, because you are right there on the cusp of some great info. I hope you can hear me. I'm going to pull you out of the screen and stream and pull you back in. Oh, there you are.
Okay.
There you're back.
All right. So before I sign out, then before it happens again, but the enemy was basically telling Yeshua, take the fall like I did. How art thou fallen, O Lucifer? Take the fall like I did and team up with me. See what we can do together with your love and my fear tactics. We can control everything there is. Team up with me. He wasn't saying bow down and worship me. He was saying team up with me. And so I find that very interesting to look at that perspective before we continue with Psalm 91:11 and 12. So there's more to that too, but I think we're at a stopping point tonight. And I want to just remind everybody, if you would, John, about Sukkot, say a few things about Sukkot. And I also wanted to say about Sukkot, if you are part of a worship team, let us know, because we may, if we don't have those positions full, we may be able to have you play on the worship team with us at Sukkot this year. Roar from Zion, September 20th through the 28th. Please get your registration in and help spread the word. It's going to be an amazing time together with Dina Dye, Nitsa Moshe, Eddie Chumney, Eddie and Tammy Johnson, Abigail and James O'Hare, John Craig, Sandi Craig, and many, many more. So you want to join us. Anyway, if you'll take over that and play the ad, and I will see you next time. And we will continue with Psalm 91:11 through 12, and maybe a little bit more on this too. All right, John, that's up to you.
Hello, this is John Craig.
And this is Sandi Craig. And we want to invite you to the Feast of Tabernacles 2021. What's it called? Roar from Zion. And it is September 20th through the 28th at Lake Paladuro in Spearman, Texas. And you don't want to miss it.
That's right. So Life of Worship Ministries and Messianic Lamb Network would like to invite you and your family to join us at the 2021 Feast of Tabernacles. Theme is, I'm going to say it again, Roar from Zion.
And it's going to be a great time of fellowship as we gather together as the body of Messiah Yeshua to honor our King. In addition to this, it's a beautiful setting, and we're working to provide a week that serves to edify the body as well as honor Yahweh and promote an atmosphere of worship in the spirit-filled and spirit-led Sukkot.
So we will have some great speakers like Dr. Dina Dye and Eddie Chumney. Of course, John and Sandi Craig, that's us, and more. And along with the nightly worship and teaching, there's going to be special workshops ranging from archery, preps, dance to special teachings, as well as children and youth activities.
And you're going to be able to take advantage of the campground's outdoor activities like volleyball and hiking and fishing and frisbee golf and so much more.
So in addition to these events, we'll have a mikvah and marriage renewal for those who are interested. So we have several different options as far as registration in order to meet everyone's needs.
There's that full-time rate covering the entire Sukkot celebration for adults and kids, as well as
weekend rates for the final days, Friday to Sunday.
Or even the single night or day rates for that first Monday through Thursday. You know what? We have options. We have options for you.
Yeah, so lodging, you can have tent spaces, RV sites. We have a discounted rate at a local hotel. So
anything, you got it. And we want you to join us. In fact, we can't wait until you are there with us.
So join us for the Feast of Tabernacles 2021. Roar from Zion. And if you have any questions, please contact us.
And you can go to www.lifeofworshipamarillo.org and you can get that information or email us at low@lifeofworshipamarillo.org.
All right.
We'll see you there.
That's right. See ya. Well, I hope you enjoyed that teaching that Sandi brought this evening on Psalm 91. I thought it was really good, and I appreciate you, Sandi, for bringing that to us this evening. And with that said, we're going to jump over to the uncensored news portion, which is the Craig Report, and we will catch you on the other side.